Look at this clipper. It has multiple shapes and it sounds awesome when you clip the drums. And here's the original break. And here's the processed break. Did you know that you don't have to use your breaks at factory setting? If you do, you'll just sound like everyone else using the same break. So here I'm going to show you 10 tricks on how to manipulate your breaks and process them to make them your own. So in a previous stream last week, we remixed this track by Rima into drum and bass. So here's the original break from our new pack, Hybrid Breaks, which just came out. You can learn more in the links below. I just love how a real life drummer can provide some funkiness and that boom bap on this break. The Hybrid drummer did an outstanding job recreating the vibe and funkiness of some of the classic funk soul breaks. The first step is to pitch it up. So I've imported my break as a MIDI file. I just find it's a lot cleaner when you pitch up breaks in MIDI. You don't need to warp the file, so you don't get any weird artifacts when you pitch it up. So here it is at normal tempo. Let's pitch it up. Because every slice has been defined here. When you pitch it up, it just plays everything at regular pitch. It doesn't need to change or warp the samples to match the tempo. I find it just sounds a lot more natural. Of course, I sliced this with my slicing preset, so I have a number of macros here that can quickly manipulate the break. You can grab the slicing preset down into the links below, but quickly I'm just going to use the pitch knob and pitch it up. I just find that when you're working with funk soul breaks, when you pitch it up, it has more of that jungle vibe. I say you can pitch it as high as 12 semitones. I'm just going to go for a 9 for this break. It already has that funky jungle vibe. And just to demonstrate, here's the original break in audio. So let's make it double time by holding shift and then hovering over the end of the break. And you'll see that you have this icon that could stretch the break. Really handy. However, this just shows the example of why I prefer MIDI over audio. Listen to how the slices, it just sounds like it's shrunk, right? As opposed to ours here, I'll just bring the pitch down so we have an apples to apples comparison. Right? The snares and kicks sound more natural. It hasn't been warped. It's not saying one is better than the other. I just prefer my breaks unprocessed when I'm pitching them up. Especially if you're stretching them. We're condensing it here. If you're stretching it like that, then you're really going to get the artifacts, right? Right. Yeah, of course, if you are warping the audio, then choose and try the different algorithms here. Each one of these will give you different sound, right? If you want that grainy sound, time search sound, sure, try like that, or texture mode. Or you can change the grain size. That's how you get that Dillinger sound. However, if you want to slice the sound more natural, then MIDI is the way to go. So I'll just show you if I were to stretch this, so make this see what I mean? You're not stretching it, it's just playing it twice as slow. So different results when you use MIDI versus audio, and I encourage you guys to experiment with both and find what makes sense for your track. Another thing to do is just use an EQ and adjust for key frequencies. Now recently I did do a video on how to EQ the aim and break, which gives you key frequencies on EQing a break. You can follow the similar frequencies for other break beats, so you can check that video up here. One of the main go-to ranges, especially for snares, is around 1200, around 2800. If you want to boost the snare, then you can up that area. You'll have to experiment to find a sweet spot for the particular break because every break is different. So this one's around 2200 here. And then sometimes I just like to duck the box frequencies, so anywhere from 200 to 700. keep in mind the hybrid breaks have already been mixed and mastered to sound tonally balanced. However, using more creative EQing to shape it to your liking is the goal here. Sometimes I might even take out the bottom end if I'm going to layer a kick on top. So that's anywhere from around 90 to even 200 hertz, up to you and what you want to remove. I'm going to pitch my break back up again. Back to jungle vibes. And you'll notice that this particular break, there's this kick. Especially if you want to replace the kick with your own kick, what I would do is find every slice that has a kick, right? Would be this one, right? Replace those either with a hi-hat or a ghost snare. It depends on the position. So if there was a ghost snare here, then this one here most likely has to be a hi-hat. And you can just move it up like there. There's another kick. So this lies in a 16th note position. What I mean by that is the ghost positions in between the 8th notes. So this position here is in between an 8th note. So this usually is a ghost snare or a ghost kick. But since we want to replace the kicks, then you can just take this and find a ghost snare. Now I could use this one, but then you're just repeating the same note. If you want a more human feel to this break, then find a different ghost snare. Like that one up there. You just don't want the same one happening consecutively. Similarly, you might want to choose a different hi-hat here. Like that. And so forth, and then just remove all the kicks. And then you'll end up with something like this. This one, I kept the first kick because I wanted one punctuation at the beginning of the break. So you notice how I removed all the kicks before. Bump, 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 bump. If that's really a creative decision, by the way, you may want the kicks, but for this particular track, I just didn't want those kicks in the way, so I went for that kind of Shy FX UK Apache pattern. Now once you have your pattern, here's a really cool thing you could do. Just right click and choose Extract Groove. And what this will do is it's going to save it as a groove profile. So as you've seen in my previous videos, I love using groove profiles like a swing profile to add swing to your beat. So you can take the identity of the drummer here, which is the hybrid drummer, and you could take his identity. And what I mean by identity is if you zoom right into the slices, you'll see that every slice is a bit off from the grid. And that's the personal identity of the hybrid drummer. That's exactly how he plays, and no drummer is the same. Every drummer has a different vibe. They might play certain hits earlier, certain hits later, and that gives the overall feel of the drummer. So when you extract that groove, you can then apply that DNA of that drummer onto a completely different loop or pattern or drum kit when you apply that groove. And well, I'll show you how we're going to use that later. Now for this track, I actually wanted to replace the snares and the kicks with my own hits. So a way around this, you can duck the snare or the main hits of the break. You can use neat tools like this, which is Devious Machines Duck. And here you see at this position and this position, I've ducked the snare. So let me play it before and after. So that ducks the snare, and I intentionally left like this little attack there. I just find that having a bit of it adds to the break when you add another layer. I find it perhaps it even makes it sound a little more natural as opposed to completely cutting it out by moving this point here, right? Then you completely don't have that slice. But I like having a little tiny transient here. So when I add a layer on top, it just sounds more natural. I'm sure you can replicate the same thing if you don't have duck, you can just add perhaps a utility. Just pull it over, just click on the gain, and you can automate every time the snare hits, just duck it down, right? So a snare would be, I believe, here and here, so you can bring it down like that, right? Right, and you just copy that every time there's a snare, and just adjust the curve to your liking, like that. So that's one way around it. Otherwise, you can just go right into the pattern and just replace the snare. You can just move that to a hi-hat. Like that. It's the same thing, different nuances with each method. So try it out and have fun with your breaks. So after ducking the main hits of the break, you can introduce your own kick and snare. So I have this kick here. And the snare is from my modular snare instrument from the Rollers kit. I just like the snare instrument because you can pretty much design any snare that you want simply by using these modulation knobs here. And if you're interested in grabbing the Rollers kit, you can also find that down in the links below. I just love the modern sound of these snares over a break. Let's bring the hybrid drummer break on top. Love the sound of blending jungly breaks with modern kick and snares. Today's video is sponsored by Skillshare. If you're a beginner and you want to learn the basics of Ableton and music production, then I invite you to check out my Ableton Essential Exercises on Skillshare. I have a number of classes to help you learn drum programming, writing bass lines, chopping breaks, and even sound design. They're aimed at those who are just starting out. If you want to learn the basics, then start there. For those that don't know, Skillshare is an online learning community, thousands of classes to help you expand on your passions and creativity. Invest in yourself and your personal growth. Do you have a specific skill you want to learn? Well, Skillshare is the perfect place to start. From photography to illustration, graphic design, and even digital marketing, there's a class for each and every one of you. If you want to get better with your mixes, I recommend you to check out Jason Allen's class, Mixing with Ableton. It's 7 hours of in-depth demonstration and explanations on how you can use Ableton to perfect your mix. Also, if you want to spruce up your music theory, then check out Mike Barnes' class, Music Theory for Songwriters. In this class, you'll learn the basics of music theory, from learning scales and what keys belong to a scale and how you can write basic chords. On top of those classes, there's tons of other music production classes to help you along your journey. Benefit of Skillshare is that there are no ads, and the first 1,000 people that use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare Premium membership. So check it out, and I'll see you at my class on Skillshare. Alright, so once you have the main break, it's nice to add some top loops such as tambourine shakers or different percussive loops to give your break a little more energy. So I've pulled this little hot pants tambourine loop from the OG Jungle sample pack, also another pack from Deviant Audio, and here's the break on its own. I just love the sound of old school breaks on top. So remember, we extracted that groove from the hybrid drummer break. So now we have the DNA of the hybrid drummer in a groove pool. And what you could do is with this break, just make sure your quantized settings is on the right grid. So make sure the 16th notes are visible. You know, on the left here where it says groove, we now see that the hybrid drummer groove is available in the drop down here. You simply select it, and then you can click this little arrow icon to commit it. And if you zoom in now, you'll see that every note is now a bit off the grid. And now it's mimicking the identity or DNA of the hybrid drummer. So now it has a little more groove. Not to mention, now when you layer it over the hybrid drummer, it's going to sound a lot more in sync as opposed to before. Things will be a little off comparatively. Another benefit of using my slicing kit is I have this tight control, so you can make the break sound tighter. So if you desire that, make sure you grab the slicing preset. Here's that original hot pants break without the hybrid drummer groove. If you listen to the low ghost notes, you'll notice it's slightly off. It's not completely bad, but if you want it to be a lot more lined up with the main break, then you want to apply that hybrid groove to it. And here it is. Just sounds a lot more in sync. Let's go back to the original hybrid drummer's break before we ducked all the hits. And one thing I like adding to the break to give it a completely different vibe is adding distortion. So the reason why I like distortion is it changes the character of the break by adding additional harmonics or saturation on top of the sound. This is completely different from adding limiting or compression, where we're actually adjusting the volume or amplitude of the break based on its attack and transients. With distortion, you're using a wave shape of some sort, and you're manipulating the sound on top using this wave shape to model the sound. So here's the original break, and here's some distortion. And I'm using Riff, and just to demonstrate what I mean by different wave shapes. In Riff, you have a number of different shapes, and these shapes can be used as a model to run your audio over. So essentially it's adding this type of harmonic on top of your audio, as opposed to adjusting the dynamics using a compressor. It's a completely different process, and it gives you different results compared to compression. The cool thing about Riff is you can apply completely different shapes on the negative and positive polarity of the break, and that gives you some interesting results as well. To demonstrate this a little further, here's an oscilloscope so that we can look at the waveform before adding the distortion and then after. So notice the overall shape or the transients does not change with distortion unless you're completely smashing it. And that's what I like about distortion, where compression, you're actually playing with the dynamics of the drum. So you might lose some of the attack of the drum when you compress or limit a break. Now finally, for a modern sound, a lot of drum and bass producers have been doing this to their drums, is adding a clipper at the end of the stage. And what this does is it completely slices off the tops or the peaks of that break. So comparatively to compression, once again, compression will actually adjust or attenuate the peaks over a threshold, and that can make your drum sound squashed. You lose the dynamics of the drums. The difference with clipping is it just slices off those peaks, and the ear still perceives those transients as still intact. So you can just run that break through a clipper. So I'm using Free Clip. It's a free VST. I think it's one of the best ones around. I like that it has these different shapes. So if you don't want that hard brick wall clipping, you can try these other shapes. Simply just increase the gain. And what you're looking for is that for that squared off top on the snares and the kick. Mix engineers will probably go crazy at us using this process, but I just think that's what gives that modern drum and bass sound. Of course, I'm putting it through an extreme, so it does sound a bit pumped. That's better. Try the different shapes. So a soft clipping, you're not getting the brick wall, so it sounds a little more natural. So it's up to you if you want the hard brick wall. I just like that modern sound. And then of course, we can duck our sounds and bring back the original kick and snare. And sounding dope. So just be mindful if you're clipping. If you're raising your gain by 11, your break's going to sound 11 dB louder, right? So you may want to compensate that by bringing the output down by 11 to get an apples to apples comparison. For some odd reason, I just add a utility here and bring the gain down, but it's the same thing. You just want to be able to compare apples to apples to make sure what you're doing to the break is beneficial and is desired. Sometimes we just perceive louder is better, which is not objectively true. Kru. So you want an objective comparison. So just make sure your gain is brought down comparatively so you get that apples to apples comparison. As a final step, I even grouped all the drum tracks together, that modular snare, the hi-hat, and the 2 breaks that we added, and they're grouped together, and I added one final layer of clipping to kind of glue the break together. So this is before and after. I just find it makes it sound a lot more cohesive as one break. It kind of just glues all the little transients together so it sounds like one. And once you're done, make sure to bounce your break as audio so you can use it in future tracks. Here's another thing that we learned in the previous stream is adding the shifter. It's the new effect in Ableton Live. Before it was frequency shifter, but now it's just called shifter because now it combines of 3 different shifting modes. There's pitch, frequency, and ring modulation. If you use the pitch frequency and then you shift it, it pitches it up, but you can also add this delay on the bottom left. And you get this interesting sound, which kind of reminds me of the Rufige Kru break. Shouts out to Goldie. You can choose the different delay amounts. Also, using frequency modulation is nice on breaks as well. I tend to use this for little edits. Maybe at the end of a 16-bar phrase, I might add a little shifter as a kind of a drum fill. You can always automate these parameters. This one here, I'm automating this window parameter, which gives it a little more movement. It just makes it sound like it's landing. Yeah, so just thought I'd throw it in there as one bonus effect. So that's all I wanted to show you guys today. Just wanted to show you a number of tricks where you can take your break and make your own. It's a common question we get a lot is, are these breaks royalty free? Well, the breaks in hybrid drums are royalty free. We always recommend that you take your breaks and make them your own. And hopefully you learned a few tricks here today where you can take those breaks and make them your own so that question never has to be asked again. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you want to support, I have a number of products, sample packs, presets, and Ableton kits to help you unlock your creativity. You can learn more down in the links below. If you want to learn more about creating modern sounding drum breaks, then check this video up here. If you want to learn a bunch of amen editing tricks, check these videos up here. Alright, until the next video guys, stay creative, stay safe, and peace out.